I must start off with a warning. We had 7 people faint in the first service this morning. It wasn't the heat. Simon got up, who was leading, and he said at the start, he said, I apologize, because of the heat, I'm not wearing my dog collar. And Andy, who's speaking this morning, is not wearing trousers. And then he corrected himself, he is wearing shorts. So I thought before I came this morning, I ought to look it up as it's an ecumenical church, URC, Methodist, Baptist, Anglican, to see if there were any regulations about whether you could show your knees or not if you were speaking. Okay, had any wrestling matches recently? I used to enjoy watching boxing and wrestling a long time ago, but I either grew out of it or I thought it wasn't Christian to be fighting people. Our passage today is about wrestling with God. Okay, we know as Christians that we're in a daily fight with God's enemy and all that enemy has brought about in this world. But what is this? Wrestling with God. Have you had a good wrestle with God recently? In context, before we apply this to our own lives, let's look at the Jacob encounter and see if any bells are rung. Deep-seated family hostilities. Jacob, the con artist, the liar, the manipulator of people. His name means deceiver, grabber, never-ending struggles. God had promised him that from him would come not just a nation, but a company of nations. Yet he was full of fear and anxieties. At a pivotal point in his life, he was about to meet his embittered brother Esau, who he had cheated out of birthright and blessing. Esau was about to kill him, surely. He'd escaped from his father-in-law. Now he was to come into the hands of his brother. He tried to bribe a caravan of gifts to precede the meeting and pacify Esau. Some hope. Powerless to control his fate. 11 kids, no possessions, 2 wives. It couldn't get any worse, and I don't mean the latter. Deep sleep on the banks of the Jabbok River, where he finds his struggle is only just starting. God shows up via an angel, wrestles with him until daybreak. Physio, please. Jacob's hit disabled, probably for the rest of his life. And then, climax of all climaxes, the angel wants out as it's daybreak, but Jacob fights on. The cheek of it. Jacob, the guilty, rotten scoundrel. I won't let you go unless you bless me. Cheek and persistence rewarded. God blessed him there. Only then does he realize what has happened. I saw God face to face, and my life was spared. His name would be changed. Jacob, deceiver, to Israel. He struggles with God. In our Western culture, even in our Western churches, we celebrate wealth, power, strength, prestige, and victory. We despise and fear often weakness, failure, and doubt. We know that this life is a mixture, that vulnerability, fear, discouragement, and depression come with normal lives. But we see this often as failure and lack of faith. The Apostle Paul, early champion of all that is positive in the Christian faith, experienced discouragements on a daily basis. 2 Corinthians 7:5. We were harassed at every turn, conflicts on the outside, fears within. Yet how God blessed him. I don't know what sort of things you've wrestled with God over the years. I was reading the Bible in a year, which includes, unfortunately I feel sometimes, the Old Testament. Thou shalt not kill. What's all this violence then, Lord? On the news at the time, constantly, Putin's Ukraine invasion. God of violence yesterday, God of love today. Wrestling honestly with the Old Testament with the help of this book, she of Bristol Baptist College, and possibly the cause of Andy Pierce's violent nature. Seriously, I do recommend that book for anyone wrestling God on this particular subject. I've wrestled over many, many years and even decades on the subject of prayer. Have you? All the time, I hear you say. In my 20s, I was a Christian and looking for a Christian partner. Prayed again, looked again. No one. In my early 30s, someone prayed a faith prayer over me to be married in a year, and I was. If God had answered positively in my 20s, I wouldn't be married to Caroline now, and my 3 kids wouldn't exist. So why didn't you, Lord? C.S. Lewis was asked to write a book on prayer. He didn't feel qualified. 2 patterns he saw. Pattern A, pray knowing the answer is conditional. That is, if it is God's will, your will be done, as Jesus prayed in Gethsemane. Pattern B, if someone prays, or better still, 2 people pray together, or a whole church locally or across the nation prays and they have faith in Jesus, the prayer will be answered. He had seen one miraculous healing, someone he knew. He had prayed for countless others with no visible results. Twice in the 20th century, churches across the world prayed for world peace in vain. 2 world wars. God's will being done. Then I remembered that I wouldn't have existed had World War II not happened. My parents would never have met. They met because of the war. That's not to say my existence on planet Earth is more important than all the hell that happened in those 2 wars, especially the Second World War, not especially in terms of, you know what I mean. My parents wouldn't have met. Was that God's will? World War II? Or should the people who prayed, just because I wouldn't have existed then, have prayed louder? Mystery. My dad was ravaged by Parkinson's disease for 10 years and died in his mid-60s. Did we pray for his healing? Yes, we did. My sister died in the same month my dad did, postnatal depression and suicide. Have we been praying for her? Yes, we had. Did we fail, Lord? Pattern A says there's a bigger picture, your will being done. It's all right, God's in charge. Pattern B says pray believing. God, you hate World War, you hate Parkinson's disease, you hate postnatal depression, and you certainly hate suicide. Come on, Lord, do it. Both patterns in different ways. Your will be done. 2 approaches, and we wrestle on. This week, a friend of ours in Cheddar, she got COVID. I'm not going into too much detail because Caroline's friend rather than mine. She got COVID the 1st March when COVID happened, and her life has been wrecked ever since. She's lost her job, etc., etc. She lost what happens with your immune system and stuff like that. And we've prayed from afar. I'm not sure how much or whether she knows God at all, but we prayed. And this week, as I was preparing this, I decided, well, let's have an experiment then, Lord, to do with this. And I went over to Cheddar, and I chose the simplest way of praying, not physically inside our house, but round our house in terms of roads. So I pray 7 times and pray according to pattern B. And Caroline was praying over here at the same time. And we prayed, and I was just waiting for the next news of Kate this week. And she had to go and have stitches And she's having stitches removed and stuff to do with an operation on her face, not to do with COVID, but partly because her immune system was up the chute. I was just waiting. The next I heard that when did she faint, Caroline? Sorry. She's a lot better now, but the next thing I've heard, having tried to pray according to pattern B, was that she'd fainted to do with these stitches. And you like that inside. Both patterns, your will be done, two approaches we wrestle on. Does praying your will be done sometimes take away faith? Oh, we haven't done the Lord's Prayer. And the Lord's Prayer, your kingdom come, your will be done. Sometimes does your saying your will be done take away praying in faith? At the moment in our lives, the stresses of a house move and some family issues. I'm sure one, if not both of those, is happening in quite a lot of lives here this morning. A pain to live with, this husband of hers. Why don't you read this morning's Glasgow prophetic word, husband? She's always preaching at me. Or might it be an angel? So I went and looked it up. Come away. You're coming into a place where you're beginning to experience me in a more intimate way. I love when you seek and press into my presence with all your heart. Did I not say that those who seek me will find me when you seek me with all of your heart? I love my time with you. I love your undivided attention. In my presence there is fullness of joy. There is peace. There is love. In my presence is freedom to move into what I have called you to do and to be. Allow me to strip away any and everything that has the potential to keep you stagnant. In my presence you will find the refreshing and refilling you so desperately long for. You've asked for revelation and insight, and it will be found in my presence, in the secret, hidden place with me. Come away with me, my beloved. Let me share with you how I see you. Let me reveal my secrets, the plans I have for you. This is my invitation to you. Come into my presence. Come away with me. Activation. Find a quiet place to spend with the Lord. Relax in his presence and allow him to share his love with you and to shower his love on you. Ask the Lord to show you how he sees you. Let him know how much you love him. Write down what the Lord is speaking to you. You have shown me the path of life. In your presence is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore. Psalm 16:11. So I went away, and I'm not suggesting everybody goes to the place I went to because it's not magic in that sense. So I went away to Compton Bishop Church under Crook Peak, a precious place from my past. I walked slowly up and down. Jacob was such a wretch, Lord, and you blessed him. I am as guilty as he was. I don't know when we've been looking at this story of Jacob. I don't know how you feel about him. Sometimes I felt so superior morally because he really was a wretch morally. At other times I look, he was going to be in that line that founded the nation of Israel and God's plan for the future of planet Earth and all that sort of thing. So God, I'm either too small for you to bless me, or I'm too small because you've got greater plans for so many other people and not for me, or I'm too sinful, as Jacob was. But surely you don't want to bless me. I looked into my own life. As you get older, I hesitate to say this just in case I get quizzed about it later, but as you get older, I'm sure you sin more with what goes on in here because you haven't got the energy to sin with the other two parts of you, and I'm not being too specific there. Thoughts, words, and deeds as guilty as Jacob was, and yet you have shown me the path of life. In your presence is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore. I've been back over to Compton Bishop Church most days since, about 7 or 10 days, I can't remember. Blessed beyond words with those words from Psalm 16. Pleasures forevermore. I thought Christianity wasn't about pleasures, Lord. I thought Jesus saved us from them. Rubbish, says God. Pleasures forevermore. Tremendous tingling all over me. Comparatively, nothing else matters, Lord. And I hope to get right through a talk without mentioning Bristol City or Somerset, but they are so bad at the moment. Lord, I'd rather just give all that up, not because they're so bad at the moment, even if they were doing well, Lord. Compared with what you're doing in my life this week, absolutely fantastic. And God blessed him there. And if he can bless him, he can bless any one of us. Whatever you're facing right now, face God with it. Compartments of your life, private. That's mine to deal with, Lord, not yours. Open up. Bring him the lot, stock, and barrel. Get someone to pray with you if you need to, but dare to bring your all. He hasn't sorted the house or family yet, as I wrote this, but doesn't he taste good? Hallelujah. Thank you.